Magnifique.
El comandante dio la orden de atacar las manifestaciones para asegurarse así el trabajo. ¿Qué consecuencias implicó su decisión? Luego murió en la huelga de fábrica. Y esto va aquí.
Another success. I never doubted myself.
Otro síntomas para Poirot. Jamás me he puesto. Por desgracia, la orden que dio el comandante conllevó la muerte de Lou y todo por pura avaricia. ¿A quién afectaría este suceso? A Elizabeth. Que Elizabeth está acá.
Some would say a lucky guess. I would say...
Elizabeth fue la que más perdió con la muerte de Lou. Tiene motivos de sobra para querer vengarse. Elizabeth no parecía albergar rencor, pero todo apunta a que buscaba venganza por la muerte de su amado Lou. Si bien encaramos a Elizabeth, debe ser con mis plenas facultades y las pequeñas células grises, completamente descansadas. Debe intentar dormir. No pienso dar más vueltas en la cama. Voy a encarar ahora mismo a Mademoiselle Elizabeth y con suerte llegaré hasta el fondo del asunto. Está fuerte el chisme, ¿eh?
Detective Poirot, I'm glad you're awake.
Bonjour, mademoiselle. It has certainly not been a night of peaceful sleep.
A la mierda.
Please,
Mamá.
detective, I'm not sure I can take any more surprises like last night.
I'm afraid this may be the most upsetting of them all.
You have found Felix's killer, haven't you?
I have. And the guilty party will certainly come as a shock.
Esto no me resulta nada agradable, mamá Sue.
Detective, please.
It was Mademoiselle Elizabeth that was behind the Major's death.
You must be mistaken. Elizabeth could not do such a thing.
I assure you I am not. It is something I spent much of last night deliberating. When you spoke of the telephone lines being out of order, it made me question the conversation I thought I had heard Monsieur Sterling make with the Major before connecting the call to him.
But it hasn't been working all weekend.
Exactement, mademoiselle. That is when I knew I had once again been lied to.
Cuando fui a hablar con Monsieur Sterling y Mademoiselle Rihanna, me encontré con Mademoiselle Elizabeth.
She was meant to be resting in the staff quarters. She has not been well.
I am afraid that was yet another lie, orchestrated to keep her from incriminating herself.
Why would you think that, detective?
I only managed a few words with her before we were quite abruptly interrupted by Monsieur Sterling.
I must admit, he has a habit of speaking over the other staff.
It was much more than merely disturbing our conversation. It was done with the intention to prevent Mademoiselle saying something that she should not.
So, Elizabeth killed Felix, and then Archibald helped her cover it up?
In its simplest form, oui. I have heard it directly from the horse's mouth.
You have spoken with Elizabeth already? Did she admit to it?
Not Elizabeth, but Monsieur Sterling.
No la despertó anoche fue un fuerte estrépito que venía desde el almacén.
I wasn't. What were you doing in there, detective?
Está sorda.
It was Monsieur Sterling that I found in there. I was taken by some surprise to hear anyone awake at that hour.
What on earth was he doing?
He claimed he was merely reminiscing of his time with the family.
You don't believe him?
It did not take long for me to uncover the truth of why he was there, and the location of the Major's murder weapon.
¿Sabía de la existencia de un compartimento secreto en el almacén?
Hidden area?
A room that held all of the Major's secrets.
I had no idea. Did you discover the reason for his blackmail?
I did. Were you aware he was dishonorably discharged from the army?
Dishonorably? What does that mean?
No voy a ocultar la verdad, Mademoiselle Angélique, pero procuraré abordar el asunto con la máxima delicadeza posible. Seguro que sabía en que Monsieur Zacharia arrastra problemas desde que luché en la guerra, ¿verdad?
Yes, Gideon told me about the conversation you had. It is really quite upsetting.
Zachariah was adamant of the Major's cruelty during the war, but the extent was not known until now. He killed a number of prisoners, men that were friends of Zachariah.
Surely not. He would not do such a thing. They must have been trying to escape.
I am afraid not. They were in fact unarmed.
Oh, detective.
It is the reason he was discharged, denied his military pension, and I believe the reason he fled England.
He had been such an important part of my life for so long, but I feel like I hardly knew him.
Monseñor Stella insistió en la inocencia de Mademoiselle Elizabeth.
Innocence? You said it was she that killed him.
It was her hand that held the knife, but he was quite insistent it happened in self-defense.
In all of the years I have known her, she has barely even raised her voice. I cannot believe she would do something like that out of mad.
The whole truth cannot be known until Mademoiselle Elizabeth has told her story.
Permití que mis ideas preconcebidas sobre su carácter me descagara. Se ve que no he sido el único. Debe encarar a Mademoiselle Elizabeth.
Will you allow me to be present?
I think that is an excellent idea. I hope your presence will calm her and will perhaps allow her to speak more freely.
Please, detective. I know she has done a terrible thing, but I beg of you to give her the time to explain herself.
I will offer Mademoiselle Elizabeth the fair trial that she deserves, as I would with any suspect.
Thank you, Detective Poirot.
Would you bring Mademoiselle Elizabeth to the study, where we will not be disturbed?
Of course, I'll find...
Con eso yo sea buena idea que lo lleve a donde le mató a alguien. Creo que en lo que más refirió Monseñor Stella, en lo que ocurrió entre Mademoiselle Elizabeth y el comandante, dudo que lo hubiera matado si él no la hubiera atacado antes con tanta virulencia como para temer por su vida. Debo escuchar su historia, la verdad, solo entonces podremos determinar su castigo. Ay.
Mademoiselle Elizabeth, merci for joining.
Miss Angeline said you requested to see me urgently.
We have some serious matters to discuss, and I would like to waste no further time.
Oh, yes, Detective.
¿Cómo se encuentra Mademoiselle?
Still not quite myself.
I was surprised when Monsieur Sterling hurried you to assist Madame Vandenbosch last night.
I should not have avoided my duties for so long. The house does not stop because I'm feeling a little under the weather.
That is true, but you cannot be expected to complete all your tasks if you are not in the right frame of mind.
Honestly, Detective, it was best for me to not sit and wallow anymore.
He descubierto varias cosas este fin de semana.
Have you been able to uncover who the blackmailer is?
Ese.
The blackmailer's identity has been established, and they will pay the price for their crimes.
Wonderful news, Detective. You can put it all behind you now. You must be thrilled.
I would not say thrilled, knowing that such a close friend has betrayed us.
Mademoiselle is correct. What I have learned over this weekend is that people are not always as they appear. While they may...
And, what of the Major's killer?
Well, mademoiselle, that is why I have asked you here now.
He preguntado a todos los invitados lo que opinan sobre el comandante. Ahora le planteo la pregunta a usted. Luz no solo se involucró en la protesta, sino que estuvo en primerísima línea.
I'm not quite sure what you want me to say, Detective.
Your honest opinion is all I ask, and, s'il te plaît, do not hold back. No one else felt it necessary.
We only spoke when there was something in the house to be done. We did not speak of interests or pastimes.
You knew of his work with Monsieur de Silva?
I only know what is required of me to know, and that is very little.
But you were aware of his work as security at Monsieur de Silva's factory.
I was.
The factory your beloved Luke worked at before he was cruelly taken from this world.
Yes, Detective.
Luz no solo asistió.
Yes, that is where he spent his last moments.
The resulting riots were a terrible tragedy, one that I hope we will not have to see or experience again.
Nobody deserved to die that day. Not my Luke.
¿Cuál culpa al comandante de su muerte?
Detective, what kind of question is that?
It is a straightforward one.
He...
Mademoiselle, if there is something you wish to tell me, now is that time.
I'm sorry, Detective, I just don't know how to answer it.
Let us consider what we know of the Major. He fronted the militia that attacked the workers at the strike. You were aware of this? You finally had someone to blame for Luke's death. Someone conveniently located in the same house, alone in his study.
No, Detective. It wasn't like that.
Tell me what happened with the Major on the evening of his death.
I was only in here trying to prove what I heard Mr. Beckers say. I was going to report him, I swear. Miss Angeline, you believe me, don't you?
I want to. I am still trying to understand it all myself. Why don't you start from the beginning?
I was delivering Miss Angeline's dress to her room when I heard Mr. Beckers arguing with the Major in his study. They were ever so loud. I thought the whole house would have been listening to what they were saying. Mr. Beckers was talking about the factory strikes and how it was the Major's fault. He told him that if he didn't own up to his crimes, he would go to the newspapers.
I cannot imagine the Major would have taken kindly to Monsieur Becker's threat.
He didn't. He called him some rather uncouth names before Mr. Beckers left and went downstairs. I made sure to keep out of sight. After the altercation between the Major and Master Gideon, you went to speak with him outside, and I thought I could look around his study without anyone knowing. I had to know for sure. If it was true, he deserved to be held accountable.
And did you find the proof you are looking for?
I found a payment from Mr. De Silva, but there was nothing incriminating about that. I was so nervous. I felt like my heart was beating out of my chest.
And then you saw the blackmail note.
I recognised the writing on the envelope. I couldn't believe it. How could he do such a thing to Angeline? To the family that had taken him in?
Common sense would determine the Major was another victim of the blackmailer.
If I'd have used common sense, I wouldn't have been snooping around alone in his study in the first place. I heard the footsteps in the hall, and before I could move, the Major was standing in front of me, demanding to know why I was going through his belongings without permission. I tried to come up with an excuse, but nothing came out, and when he saw the letter in my hand, it was like Dr. Jekyll turning into Mr. Hyde. I tried to move around him towards the door, but he hurled something towards me, and it crashed against the wall.
That would explain the damage to the wall.
I froze. I have never been so scared in all my life. I thought he was going to kill me there and then.
And you thought you would beat him to it?
Oh, Detective, you make it sound as though I had it all planned. He lunged forward and grabbed me by the arm. I tried to push him away, but he was too strong. If only you had seen the look in his eyes, I dared not even scream. I saw the sheath on his belt. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to hurt him, but he wouldn't let go of me.
So you took your opportunity to put an end to it all.
I just wanted to get him off me. I didn't want to hurt him. I reached for it and I jabbed it at him. His grip...
You did not even look to see what state you had left him in?
She had just been attacked, Detective.
Oui, please. Continuez.
Hombre, yo me están atacando y yo no me voy a parar a comprobar su pulso. Que se joda.
I ran down to the pantry looking for Rahana. I explained to her what had happened, and she went to find Archie. She said he would know what to do. We went back to the study, and he was still lying there, motionless. Archie said that no one would believe me. That if someone like me killed someone like him, I would be sent straight to the gallows. He left the letter so you would find it. He said that if people knew what the Major was really like, then they wouldn't care what happened to him.
So I am to believe that it was Monsieur Sterling and Mademoiselle Rihanna that cleaned the scene and orchestrated a plan that included a fake telephone call and dressing as the Major so that he may be seen.
I swear I had no idea that is what they had done. Archie just told me to stay out of sight.
Then Monsieur Sterling and Mademoiselle Rihanna will be charged for obstruction of justice and impeding my investigation.
Please, Detective, they were only trying to help me.
If they wished to help you, they should have brought all of this to my attention immediately instead of committing more illegal acts.
Surely you haven't forgotten what happened with Fleurette. She was only accused of stealing a bracelet. I killed a man.
It is a day I have not forgotten, mademoiselle. Even for a moment.
Without your help, I don't stand a chance. Please, Detective Poirot, you are the only one that can help me.
Oh, Elizabeth, why didn't you come to me?
I didn't think you would believe me. I felt so guilty. And when it was announced yesterday that he was a victim of the blackmailer, I wanted to tell you everything. I came to find you last night, Detective, but Archie... I'm sorry.
Venga, mi peña. Ah, sí, que hay que resolver el misterio. Esta mamá siempre la dice todo el rato. Ok. Vamos acá. ¿Dónde? ¿Aquí? Ah. ¿Qué falta? ¿Por qué? ¿Por defender la propiedad?
I must take a different approach if I am to uncover.
No. ¿Y aquí?
I should not be surprised by my own skills of deduction.
Pero claro que sostiene Margau. El comandante murió por un ataque en defensa propia. Por fin he resuelto el caso de asesinato del comandante. Aunque no me resulta nada agradable declarar como asesina a Mademoiselle Elizabeth, ojalá no se en esta situación. Ok. ¿Y ahora qué?
Oh, yes, Detective.
¿Y el puño
I
del
don't know where it
comandante?
is.
If you have been honest with me until now, I ask that...
I'm sorry, I really don't know. Archie dropped it out of the study window and he said he would deal with it. I couldn't bear to touch the thing.
El puño lo tengo yo. Pero como dice la mamá de Elizabeth, creo que realmente no sabe nada del asunto. Se conoce los esfuerzos de Monsignor Stelly y Mademoiselle Reana para encubrir lo que había hecho Monsieur Stelly. No mente solamente que haría lo que fuera por ella. Merci, Mademoiselle, espérame mi invitación. Si es popular.
Please, I was only protecting myself. I didn't want to hurt him. He just wouldn't let me go.
Oui, mademoiselle. I know. Mademoiselle tells quite the harrowing story.
I cannot imagine the Major acting in such a way, but Elizabeth could not make up such a story.
After learning what I have about the Major's character this weekend, I would not question the lengths he would go to in order to keep his secret hidden. I know that you share a close bond with Mademoiselle Elizabeth, but you cannot allow your personal feelings to taint your belief of what took place.
She has committed a terrible crime, but she will live with that for the rest of her life. She is not a cold-blooded killer.
If what she says of the Major's attack is true, she acted in self-defense, and in the law's eyes, a crime has not been committed. I will do everything I can to make sure her story is heard and a fair trial is conducted.
¿Cree la veracidad del testimonio de Mademoiselle Elizabeth? En el arrebato de ira del comandante antes de la amenaza de que sus oscuros secretos salieran a la luz, atacó a la joven Mademoiselle y la obligó a defenderse de ella, de esa misma. Se puso en una situación muy arriesgada, pero una pequeña parte de mí elogia su determinación por buscar justicia para su amado y el resto de los trabajadores que perdieron la vida a las órdenes del comandante. Si la línea telefónica funciona, debo hacer una llamada para comunicar los resultados de mi investigación. Aún no despejaban de nieve la carretera y tardaron un buen rato en llegar.
Mademoiselle, it is time I addressed the house.
Are you sure? What will you say? What if they do not listen?
I can assure you, they will.
Elizabeth was right, though. She's just a servant. What if they...
Mademoiselle, when Detective Poirot speaks, they will listen.
Porque lo diga.
Would you ask the guests to convene in the library?
Of course. And what of the staff?
I have told Monsieur Sterling to remain in the staff quarters with the others. When the authorities arrive, they shall be dealt with. You have been of great help to me throughout my investigation, and now that it is over, I have one final request.
You only need to ask.
While I am speaking with the guests in the library, would you watch over Mademoiselle Elizabeth in my room?
You don't think she will try and escape, do you?
In her position, I do not know what she might try. But I trust with you there, any potential ideas of such a thing will be squashed.
Capítulo 9, final. Venga. Desenlace.
Detective, you have spent more time making us sit and wait for you than anything else.
Cállese, señora.
Madame
Esa es la mierda.
Bosch, if you think I have spent my time focused on anything besides uncovering the Major's killer, you are sorely mistaken.
I'm sure you will be eager to share your findings with us then.
All in good time, Madame. Firstly, to understand the truth of what has occurred this weekend, one must know the timeline of events that not only preceded the Major's death, but succeeded.
We are all well aware of what happened before, Detective. You can save your breath.
You are only aware of what the guilty parties wanted you to believe, but now I shall apprise you to the true events. The reason for us all being here, you know. The altercation between Monsieur Demire and the Major, you know. The body of Monsieur Hagen was found while we were all sat enjoying a most delicious meal. That you also know. But what was kept from us all was that his body lay on the study floor for far longer than was thought.
It was that servant. She found him.
S'il te plaît, monsieur. It was indeed young Inga that found the Major's body lying lifeless in the study.
So it was her.
Monsieur, I will not allow for any further interruptions. I return to the Major's body. If we are to believe the scene that we were presented with, the Major must have been killed during the first course of our meal, a meal that none of you left, even for a moment. Speaking in the evening, you all confirmed one another's alibis, and although there was doubt in the validity of some, I confirmed that they were indeed all true. What I could not understand was how a man came to be found dead, and every guest accounted for at the time of death. That is until I questioned the latter.
Okay.
Monsieur Beckers, I shall now allow you to speak. You saw the Major smoking a cigar in the snow. Is that true?
It is.
False. You saw what you are meant to see. Someone in the Major's coat standing outside, giving the illusion that the Major was still very much alive. Monsieur da Silva, on the afternoon of the Major's death, do you recall hearing a telephone ring?
Now that you mention it, I have not heard a single ring all weekend.
Hostia, los ojos de ese, ¿no? Qué miedo.
Correct. The telephone lines have been down for the duration of our stay, meaning the telephone call that was received and promptly directed to the Major's study was yet another act of trickery and deceit. But it did not end there. When I entered the study for the first time, it was obvious someone had already been there and falsified the scene to stage a burglary and clear away important evidence, including the murder weapon. What followed was an investigation that had already been hindered, but even those lengths were not enough to derail me for long.
I think we have all had enough of your self-praise, Detective. Perhaps you would like to tell us who
Cállese,
killed
estoy en un
him
momento de
now?
gozo.
Madame, as I'm sure you would expect, it is not as simple as that. What many of you do not know is the discussion that was had between the Major and Monsieur Beckers earlier that day.
What has that got to do with anything? I told you I didn't kill him.
That I know to be true. What you do not know is that it was not only his ears that heard your spoken words.
I hope you are not implying I had something to do with it.
No, pero si
No,
pudiera la
madame,
implicaría.
there was another. Mademoiselle Elizabeth. You are all aware that the Major was hired by Monsieur de Silva to front the security during the workers' strikes. What very few of you know is that it was the Major's order that instigated the vicious attacks on those unarmed men and resulted in numerous deaths, including Mademoiselle Elizabeth's fiancé, Luc. Monsieur Beckers confronted the Major, declaring that he was to hand himself in. That is what Mademoiselle Elizabeth overheard. Now, knowing the truth, she waited until the Major was away from his study. After he stepped outside following the confrontation with Monsieur Demire's fist, it looked to be the perfect opportunity, or so she thought. The Major returned and found her looking for the proof she required to hand him over to the authorities.
If the maid bumped him off, why hasn't she been arrested?
The events that followed in the study are not those of a cold-blooded murder, but one of a young girl that had no other option but to protect her own life.
Sounds to me, Detective, like you have taken a shine to this young girl and would rather protest her innocence than arrest her for murder, the crime she has committed.
Jeez, this is gonna make for a juicy story.
Mademoiselle, I ask you this. You have seen the Major's anger before, oui?
What if I have?
How do you think he would have reacted if someone was to find proof that he had committed a terrible act, and that if made public, would surely result in his incarceration?
Porque no se puede pausar, tengo ganas de beber agua.
Exactement.
It is quite the story you have told, Detective, but all I have heard is that Elizabeth overheard a conversation blaming the Major for her fiancé's death, and she murdered him in revenge. A servant killing a man that is as revered as he was. She will face the noose.